Yo, what's good? Welcome to Observing the Process. Before we start, I'm hoping you can help me out by supporting the show. You can rate and review it on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. You can share it with your friends, you can blog about it, or discuss it on your own podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe to my channel and like this video, or you can support it directly. You can do this by going to my website. I'll leave a link in the description. Thank you for supporting the show. Listeners like you make it possible. Today on the show, I had Andy Curtin. Andy is a comedian who has been living in Shanghai for the past 10 years. He's worked with many of the greats, such as Jim Gaffigan and Aziz Ansari. But after a decade in Shanghai, he's moving out to Hong Kong to open up a new comedy club there. Please give it up for Andy Curtin.
In the land of China, people hardly got nothing at all.
No possessions?
And in China, they never go to church.
No religion too?
Or do magic.
Well, it's easy if you try, Dick.
2, 1. Okay, we're live. Andy, how are you doing? Thanks for coming over.
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So this is it. You're leaving Shanghai. You're going down to Hong Kong. Is that right?
I am, yeah.
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 What's the plan for that? You just going to jump into work again? Or are you taking some time off? Or?
Oh, no, we're opening a venue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're scheduled to open a new comedy club in Central in the end of October.
Oh, awesome. So the wheels are already in motion for all of that.
Yeah, I mean, we should have been built by now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I mean, when you're in Hong Kong is a little bit different to mainland China when you do stuff. There's like regulations and stuff that you have to follow. So we're a little bit behind schedule, but we're, beginning construction now. So.
Well, so for people who don't know, you do comedy. Can you tell the audience how you even got into comedy?
It's one of those things where I sort of feel like maybe I was led to it by my subconscious a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, how old are you?
I'm 27.
You're 27. Did you grow up watching like Delirious, or are you too young for that?
Delirious. No,
okay,
it doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, if you're over 30, anyone over 30 in any English-speaking country watched Eddie Murphy do a comedy special in 1983. And then it was like, for the next 20 years, it was like the most popular video at any video store.
Yeah.
Of him doing an hour of stand-up, and, people my age grew up on that. And it never occurred to me that I wanted to do it, but it was just a piece of, entertainment that was just so embedded in what I found funny and like what emphasis I had on funny and stuff like that. And so I had a friend of mine say, "Oh, you should do stand-up. You should try it," which everyone's heard that statement. I think. If no one's ever said that to you, I think you don't have any friends. Like, that's but for some people it resonates, and I was working in finance and I just hated every day of what I was doing. And I was sort of using one side of my brain, I think. And I don't know. I just had this idea in my head. I was like, let's just get 5 funny, like not like let's do a comedy show. Like it's like, oh, we're playing darts. Okay, let's do 5 minutes of jokes each. It was very unofficial.
Like with no crowd or with a bit of a crowd?
Well, we were so afraid we didn't bring the crowd.
Right.
That's
an interesting way to
8 or
go
9
into
comedians. I couldn't get anyone to agree to do it in front of a person that wasn't.
And this is in China.
This was in Dagulu, Shanghai.
Okay.
Yeah, the place doesn't exist anymore. It was an old music bar called BD's. And, 8 of us, we had a lot of fun telling each other jokes. And we're like, wow, what if we invited people to a free show, no expectation. And it just was insane. I think 200 people tried to come to it. So some crazy number of people, like way more than could fit in the venue. Like we were trying to get to the show, and there was just crowds of people outside that are like, we can't get in.
Wow. Yeah, I went to one show at Cage's, and I was surprised. Like, it feels like the comedy scene is actually having a bit of a, like, it was coming up. We can talk about that later, how I feel like it's dwindling. But I want to just touch on like starting again, because like for me, people have told you that, like, or me, most people, they say you can just try comedy, try it. But the fear of bombing is terrifying to me. Like, even when you tell a bad joke in front of your friends. So what does it feel like to bomb? Like when you were starting out, did you have those like terrible experiences of like, oh, my joke just didn't come across? Or
yeah, well, I mean, like, there's a lot of delusion involved. When you do stand-up, you meet these people who will bomb so horribly, and you'll watch them and be like, I just couldn't look at a human again. I go and live in the woods if that happened to me. And then they'll go, hey, that went pretty well.
Really?
So how you respond to it. It's a weird thing because it is nothing. It is a meaningless. There's no one's physically hurt. No one else is going to remember it. You know, there's just however you feel about it is 100% of what bombing is.
Right. It's all internal, actually. There's no external thing going on there.
Well, you might, develop a nervous tick or something, but but I think that the fear of bombing is the fear that a lot of people have in a lot of their life, and it prevents them from doing their best work.
Yeah.
The idea that, people are going to judge me and I didn't make something good. It's like, fucking get over yourself.
Right.
Because if you want to make something good, you got to make it, it's like that I can't remember who it was. I think it was the guy who did Looney Tunes, but whenever it was some great cartoonist that we would all know the work of, I have a bad memory. He said, we've all got 10,000 bad drawings in us. Best to get them out as fast as possible.
Right.
The idea that you could make something good without first making a lot of really bad
definitely
is just arrogant.
Definitely. Like I've been recently,
and so you got to get over yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm playing around
about you.
playing around with like starting a YouTube channel, and I'm looking at these successful creators, and it's fun to actually go back in time on their accounts and see
how terrible
they had like 1 or 2 years. A lot of these dudes with like low view counts, and that's sad that I'm even judging by low view counts, but I
can see you in your room at night just
just laughing at
Look at this idiot with 100 views and he's wearing a chicken suit on the metro.
It takes a long time to get to where you want to be. So I feel like, and eventually you'll get better. And I don't know, how do you do that?
I think it's very telling about you that you put that in the lens of becoming a great creator, which is not what I was saying. I was saying something more general than that, which is that people hold themselves back all the time because they're like, what are other people going to think about that? It's like, just do it. No one cares.
Yeah.
Whether it's, I don't really care about any of these things, but like wearing a piece of clothing that you like, but you don't know what people think about, or going out and meeting people you don't know, anything. It's the same genesis of a mental response.
Yeah.
It's just more extreme when people are so confronted with the judgment of stand-up. You don't have anything else there except a microphone to protect you, and you have a lot of judgment coming at you.
Well, what advice for people would you have to like get over these? Like,
don't do it. No,
don't do it.
No, I'm kidding. I think that the probability of you becoming a professional stand-up comedian is pretty low. So I think the way to think about it is like, what do I get out of this? First of all, being able to tell people that you've done stand-up. If you've done stand-up once and Chris Rock has done stand-up for decades, both of you can make the statement, I've done stand-up. I think that's pretty cool. Personally, I think that's worth it alone. In addition to that, it's like, why do people jump out of airplanes? Why do people bungee jump? Why do people do anything? Why do people face their fears? I think that whenever you're afraid of something, then to me, that's an indication that you should do that thing. And it doesn't matter, whatever it is. Like if you're afraid of heights, or you're afraid of the dark, or you're afraid of whatever, do it. Do that thing. And because it's like an unlocking for your confidence. It's like, well, if the thing that scared me the most didn't really have any negative consequences, is that not liberating? The alternative is that you live in a world where everything scares you, and you stop yourself before you're acting. Like another example that is relevant to expats, I think, is people that speak languages well. You look at people that speak languages really well, they make a lot of mistakes and they don't care. They don't sit there and pause. You just go, hey, this person's grammar's not amazing, but you can communicate with them. Whereas the vast majority of people that want to speak another language get so swept up in their head, afraid they're going to say the wrong thing, afraid how that person's going to react when they say the wrong thing, afraid that they're not going to understand the thing that person says in response, and they don't learn how to speak a language. The consequences are severe for thinking like that.
Yeah, I suffer from the same thing.
Everybody does. Everybody does. No one doesn't suffer. Anyone that doesn't suffer from that is a serial killer.
Right.
But that's my point. Bombing is 100% your reaction to it. It's your reaction to it. Like, do you let it stop you?
Yeah.
Do you let it inhibit your future decisions, or do you say to yourself that a sense of doubt isn't enough to stop me from doing something?
Yeah, it can be terrifying to face your fears.
Most
but-
of my stand-ups like this, by the way, preachy and not funny.
No, you were funny. I went to your last show, your Life in China show. I guess.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. It was can you tell me about that? Because you started Kung Fu Comedy.
I did.
So you started a venue. What was it like starting your own project in China, and what was the project? Tell people about Kung Fu Comedy.
Well, so when I started, there was no local stand-up in China. So we were the first people. Well, actually, so my business partner who I ran Kung Fu Comedy with, he was in Suzhou. I didn't know him at the time. He had a year before us started running roasts, and they kind of morphed into stand-up shows. So when we ran the first show in Shanghai, he called us up. He's like, "Yep, let's work together." And he's one of my best friends. We've worked together for years. And it was, we didn't have a venue. We didn't really have comics. We didn't have anything. We just were a bunch of people that in a city that didn't have any stand-up. That was like there was stand-up coming through once every year or once every 6 months, like. And there's a Australian guy who would bring through a few like British comedians, and they do a show out in like Jinchao for the expats of Jinchao, but not what you would call a local. Not a stand. There wasn't a lot of stand-up. So when we started doing it, people were just crazy. Every show was full.
Yeah,
and we were so bad. Like it's astonishing that people would sit through those shows.
Yeah,
and sometimes they didn't. But we were. As a weird, like the first two shows, half of the lineup still do stand up, most of them professionally.
Wow.
Which in the world of people trying open mic, that is an astounding hit rate.
Do you think that's because like doing it in China has something to do with it? And
I do
just
think,
like such little of an audience here.
Well, it's not just China, right? Like if you want to be a comedian in New York, starting at the bottom is almost impossible. Because that is a city populated with amazing comedy. So if anybody wants to watch comedy, they can watch celebrities for free any night of the week.
Sure.
Why would they go and be supportive in an open mic? They've all seen a lot of stand-up, so their standards are a lot higher. Whereas what we found, and I know this around the world, is when there's no stand-up, people cut you a lot of slack. They're just excited that you're doing it.
Right.
The mentality is a lot more supportive that people come into, and that allows, it's like having training wheels on. It's like your level of difficulty on shows is way lower.
Sure.
As opposed to like if I go to New York now, I'm like, these people are like, you better be fucking funny because I just came from a Broadway show,
Yeah.
And am I allowed to swear? I don't know what your rules
You can
are.
swear.
Okay.
I put on explicit.
Okay, great. Well, fucking no. So the other thing is that we found is that when we started, there was a real inclination to talk about what it's like living here. And that was a point of view that was very interesting to people that were expats and local people.
I have a question that just popped up in my head. A lot of expats in Shanghai, they'll do a lot of bits about living in Shanghai. Do you think that can sometime, limit them as a comic because that material is not going to work outside of Shanghai?
I kind of see it differently. It's like what you don't see is where each comic in the lineup is in their comedy career. And if you go to a showcase, from person to person, they're in very different places. If it's Muhammad Magdi, who tours around the world, has been on Comedy Central, and then the next person's been doing it for 6 months, you don't know. Right? You're just assessing them like they're all equal. When you start doing stand-up anywhere in the world, wherever you are, you will write local jokes.
Yeah.
That's just what happens with everyone. And then almost everyone. I've seen a few people that just for whatever reason naturally wrote more transcendent material, but what happens is you only are able to perform in that city and your material works everywhere. And then you have an opportunity because you get better. You go to another city and you're like, oh my God, I thought I had an hour. I have 5 minutes. And then as you get better, like when you move around frequently, you just learn that this material is not going to work elsewhere. And also when I think about great comics, like bland comedy is accessible, but great comedy goes deep enough into the material that even though it's very local, it taps into feelings like I have kids now. But before I had kids, I liked Louis C.K.'s material about having kids because I didn't know what he'd done, but I have been angry. I've been frustrated. Once you get deep enough into what is beneath
Yeah.
the material, then people can relate to it. It can be local. Making your local material work is kind of one of the higher levels of doing stand-up. Not saying I would achieve that, but that
One
is
of the higher levels of
being able to take
making your local level content work across the globe or just in the local zone?
No. Local in the local zone is easy.
Yeah.
Local in the global zone that's when you're really
I would
getting.
agree.
That's when you're getting into the meat of like what is really behind what you're talking about. you know?
Yeah. Definitely. I want to go back to opening up Kung Fu Comedy because
Me too, but I can't. They fucking shut it down.
they shut it down. But they shut it down, but they're still allowing Goat or something to open up. Is there a story behind that?
Yeah, Goat is run by Chinese people.
Oh, so they just have like Guanxi. It's like pretty
They do.
bland story.
Yes.
There's not much more to it.
Nope. That's 100% what's going on.
Yeah, it's just like favoritism. I would say, or would you say?
I would say favoritism is a euphemism.
Okay, so you're gonna have the freedom to do what you want in Hong Kong. You hope
for a couple of years.
for a couple of years. Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about moving to Hong Kong in general? Like, one of the things I realized, like, you're not gonna have WeChat down there. Like, what do you think it's gonna be like?
Can't wait.
You think it's gonna be a good
You think I'm
adjustment?
going to be upset about the internet in Hong Kong after living in China
not. But like
for 10 years? What?
going back to the
I have
States.
Instagram. I mean, WhatsApp. I'll be
For sure. But I'm talking about like daily accessibility to certain things. It's just going to be an adjustment.
Mate, I want to get off WeChat.
Really?
Yeah, I want people.
I find it so convenient here.
I hate it.
You hate it. I love it. I love group chats. I love like being able to pay with my phone. Do they have that, paying with your phone down in Hong Kong?
No, they have Okta. You know what? I'm being cute, but it is. I do love being able to pay with my phone, and it isn't as common there.
Yeah.
But I am more interested in a better internet.
Of course. I can't argue with that. I would much rather have,
If I have to choose between having to pay with my phone and my phone working consistently.
Dude, absolutely. I'm not battling you on that. I'm just wondering about like, there's so many things that are so convenient about Shanghai that I'm not sure Hong Kong has, like the mobile, the mobites.
You know what?
And,
I'm
that
bitter.
kind of stuff.
I'm angry. I'll admit that. The charm of Shanghai is completely lost on me.
Yeah.
I loved this city for 8 years, and then the city changed, and I don't like it anymore.
Really? I mean, you're not the only one. I've been talking. You're not the first guest I've had on that's like, I start the show off with, well, you're leaving. Like, why is that? Like, you're literally number 3 or number 4 or something like that. So I don't know why at this point it seems like it's really taking a turn for not such like a welcoming place, and it's just becoming harder for people to start their business or live their life the way they used to.
There's a lot of anti-foreigner sentiment being pushed. There's, if you look online, there is now the general advice is do not be a teacher in China because there are so many legal attacks on them and they're not getting defended properly. Yeah. And I get really annoyed with people who say, oh, well, it hasn't happened to me, and I think that's such a small-minded way of reviewing things. And I've been very fortunate, to tell you the truth, about the way things have played out for me. But I have a lot of friends whose businesses have just been taken off them, who've been locked up, for just stuff where you're like, people shouldn't be treated like this. And the reality is that the irony is there's a parallel between America and China right now, where people are being told from the top down that it is okay to be openly racist, and people are just going for it. It doesn't mean that everyone's racist. It means that racist people are acting with impunity.
I've heard that before. Like, since Trump has become elected,
I'm not even going to waste a second being negative about Trump, because I just think
the conversation's not about that. The conversation is about people have said that, Trump being in power gives racists an opportunity to be more public about what they think.
I think that's a fair statement. Yeah. I think there is no longer the stigma that there used to be. Like,
I was just listening to Joe Rogan and I think it's Jim Gaffigan, and they were saying how, like, before when Jim would tour around, he would do, Hillary jokes and Trump jokes, and it was totally fine.
And he said, and then after she lost, they would just stare at the ceiling.
They didn't want to hear it. Well, they couldn't deal with it. What did he
say? They'd had political, not overload, but they just, it was some way he had of describing that they just had too much.
Yeah, they were just overwhelmed with it. I don't know what I know.
But I think that's a separate point, and I don't want to even waste your time like getting into the political aspect of it. I just think on a very simple level, racism is everywhere. Every country is racist. Don't tell me your country's not racist. Every country is racist. But there's a societal way of processing our racist instincts. You know, everybody is racist in the same way that everyone has self-doubt. Everyone has the genesis of a racist thought. It's, you know, how you process it. And then there's how society processes it. If you go out and say, I'm not hiring you because you're black or whatever, how does everyone else look at that? You know, and that's what I think is changing. You know, there's so much targeting of foreigners going on. And the other thing is, if you go online, you know, I've seen this over the years. I've been here for 10 years now. And when they need a distraction, when the powers that be need a distraction, they'll divert attention to Japan or to a lesser extent Korea or foreigners, right? And one of the ways they do that is suddenly there'll be a viral video. I remember there was one years ago, there was like a Russian dude calling a woman a cunt on a metro. And that was like, people got so mad about that. There was just animosity towards foreigners. The frequency of stories like that, negative about foreigners in the last 6 months is I listed them on a podcast recently. There were 14 current stories.
Where do you get the stories from?
Go to Weibo. Go look at Shanghai. Shanghai is.
Or I'm saying, do you speak Chinese or do you?
I speak Chinese. Yeah,
and you can read it.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not going to get that information.
Well, I'll tell you this. So Shanghai is the bulk of their material is translating stuff that's trending on Weibo. So if you read something on Shanghai, it's probably
Shanghaiist. Oh, okay.
That's where they get their material from. Is what's trending on Weibo.
Really?
Yes.
That's fascinating.
That's what you go and look at it. They've got all screen grabs from stuff that's being shared there, or you know, a video that's gone viral.
It's such bad journalism just to be taking stuff. Do you think they add their own twist, or do you think they?
I don't think it's bad journalism. It's not
for copying pasting.
No, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's an aggregator. Why as long as you understand what it is, why is it bad journalism?
No, for sure.
Know,
if they're not lying, all I'm saying is they're not lying about it.
It's bad journalism. If you think that these guys are sleuths out there cracking a story, they don't say they're doing that, you know?
Right. That's all I'm saying. It depends on how they're displaying the media, whether they're calling it their own original content.
I don't think they've ever been dishonest about what they're doing.
I don't know if they have been or not.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering.
I you know, Kenneth is a friend of mine who runs Shanghai. He's done I'm watching him transform that thing has been pretty incredible.
They went through a tough time though, didn't they? Almost like they shut down for a second. Now they're back.
Well, that had nothing to do with them though. That was their parent company.
Right. I read a little into it, and that's the most I got.
So they were the parent company was the Gothamist in the US, and the owner had a falling out with the journalists, and so he was like, "I'm pulling the pin on this," and that shut them down, and it also shut down their website because they had, I don't know, I guess they had I'm not a tech guy. The website was being run out of the US office. The US office was capable of shutting down their website.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
But they overcame that, you know, and that's kind of a pretty tangential train of thought. But the point I'm making is that you can use Shanghai as a resource to see what is trending on Weibo and just go and look, man. Look how many negative stories there are about foreigners being shared around.
Yeah.
It's not an accident. These things are not just happening by chance.
Yeah. Do you know about like the 50 Cent Army?
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
have you do you think you've been personally attacked by them?
No, but it would be nice to think that because you definitely get attacked if you put content.
People ask me that all the time. Like, you know, for Shanghai Observer, I don't know if you know, I do that. This Instagram where I post like pretty much just like stuff that's happening around Shanghai, funny stuff, whatever. And I've been asked all the time, like, oh, do you think you get attacked by the 50 Cent Army? And I actually never get like really negative, you know, direct comments.
Mama Hoo gets negative stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you guys are like so...
They're just big. That's probably when you get to a certain size. Then,
but I don't think you guys are even like rude. I don't know. It's just so
mate, the stuff that people complain about. It's pretty absurd.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one in particular where it was just dumb. And you talk about bad journalists. So we did. So Lauai Park. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Found 158 is a place where people drink. Basically, Shanghai shut down a bunch of foreign streets and forced foreign bar owners to open bars within one location that was a pit underground.
Yeah.
And we did a whole thing basically saying that was Lauai Park, like Jurassic Park. Like you can go there, Chinese people could go there and see foreigners in their natural habitat. And journalists thought that we were Chinese. And there was this whole like uproar online being like, how dare they describe foreigners as animals? Their true colors have been revealed. It's like, dude, we're white and we're making a joke.
Yeah.
You know, like look on, like our information is pretty accessible online. You know, if you're a journalist, you could look it up on your phone within 2 minutes, but they had a story they wanted and it started getting retweeted by senior, you know, someone senior at SCMP and stuff.
I think that's the problem with just the internet in general, about how it's so easy to make a quick comment without doing the research.
I think it's an opportunity to reveal to yourself the problems with thinking like that. You know, it's like it's an extreme example where you can get swept up if you aren't smart enough to think maybe there's another version to this that I don't know yet. You know? And I think that
another version,
personally, when I see stuff online now, no matter how angry that headline is going to make me, I just naturally go, all right, well, what might else have happened? What's the alternate version of this that's possibly true? And that is a function of having been tricked so many times by these ridiculous retweeting, trending, whatever headlines that are just, sorry, I keep playing footsies with you under the table. It's been a quiet night for me. All right. Yeah. And so anything negative like that, I think is a catalyst to be like, all right, I need to think harder about stuff before I pass my judgment on it. I think that society conditions us to have an opinion about everything way beyond what is ever needed.
Sometimes you just don't even need to have an opinion.
Oh, most of the time you don't.
Right.
But we do.
Yeah.
It's
so easy.
We're conditioned to be like, it's good, it's bad, it's evil, it's whatever.
Do you ever get into it with people online? Do you go into those?
Generally, no. In fact, in the space that I'm in, of the people that I create with, there are some people that do that. And I don't. Because I don't think that, and truthfully, the times that I have, and this is going to sound arrogant, but I have usually convinced the person they were wrong.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Because sometimes,
and it'll be like
if they're punching up, they just want to connect with you.
Often they never think they're going to get a response from the person that made it.
Yeah.
And once they, and sometimes they are fans. Even though they've said this horrible, and they're embarrassed that they're like, oh my God, you read it, you know.
Joe Rogan says that all the time. People attack him and then he'll respond.
I'm not comparing myself to Joe Rogan. You know?
Well, it's okay, dude. If you're like a creator and you're on the level where someone is following you as a fan, it's not a matter of like what level he's at and what level you're at. I'm talking about like someone is a fan to him, you know? So I'm talking about like trying to connect with the person like that.
I think from a point of view perspective, that is true. And it's like, not to people think they couldn't, you know, get access to me, for Christ's sake. But you just like, here's an example of, you know, taking someone on. So I had a joke that I wrote. Sorry. I used to post a joke of the day. That was how we marketed before they had public accounts on WeChat. So we've been running shows longer than WeChat's been a thing.
That's impressive.
Just to put that in perspective.
2015 or 2013, I think WeChat or 12.
So we started shows in the end of 2010.
Okay.
So the public accounts weren't a thing. So we just had a private account, which I still have to this day. People are like, why do you have a private account? I'm like, man, that's all they had when we set this up. You know? So I would post a joke of the day. Then Moments came out. So I would post a joke of the day on Moments. And it was really popular. In fact, there was at a time where like anything I posted would get like 80 likes on a private.
That's a lot.
There's a lot, yeah. Because that's where people were paying a lot more attention to it. It wasn't as washed out with people's feet on a beach and food and all of that.
Sure.
Selling some crappy jewelry.
Fake shoes.
So I had a joke that was from Danny Boyle. It was quoted. I would quote comedians. And I had a joke from Danny Boyle and it was like, why do pedophiles always have beards and glasses? What is it about that look that children find so attractive?
Oh my God.
Which is a funny joke.
Yeah.
And then all of these people were screenshotting it and putting it on their Moments and saying, do not follow this account. These people, you can never joke about this. And my answer was this, right? No one was molested because of that joke. But the point of view that you cannot talk about it is one of the major reasons why pedophilia is prevalent
Mm.
because people say don't talk about it. And I'm like, you're telling me not to do that joke is actually dangerous, whereas the joke doesn't hurt anyone.
I completely agree. And
Well, the two people I messaged about it, they were like, I'm actually really sorry. And I can actually see what you're saying. And whether I'm right or
because
wrong.
the thing is, they think they're a good person. They genuinely think they're doing
right,
good
and they
things.
don't understand what they're doing is actually legitimately harmful.
Yeah.
And that actually, if everybody was comfortable making jokes about being molested, we might be like, hey, it's happened to all of us.
Right. Well, because what I think comedy does is it puts a taboo topic, in people's faces and then gives you the accessibility to talk about it in your private home. Because, maybe it started off as a joke, but then can get more serious
I
into
think it's capable of that. I'm not going to say that's what comedy is, but it's capable of that.
that. Of course, that's not what it is, but I think it's one important thing of what comedy can offer to
I
a
agree with
community.
that. Yeah, I agree with that statement. And I've just been reading, there's this great book that I think I've had for years, and I just started getting into it, called The Comedians by Cliff Nesteroff. And it basically takes the stand-up from like vaudeville times until now. And it's phenomenal. And there was a time in America when the use of profanity and sex was very similar to how it is now in China. And I keep referring to America because that is where stand-up was invented or created. And and there were very important developments that happened to it. If you take Richard Pryor, who many people think is the stand-up, the guy, the best of all time. Before him, African-American comedians were a certain sort of trying to appease the norm style. And then this guy gets up and he's like, I do drugs. I'm unabashedly black. I talk like, people actually talk in their homes.
Sure.
No one had ever seen that, And so that's like a mindset shifting thing to see where you're like, oh, this is possible. And like I said, it's rare that happens. In this day and age, it's hard to imagine being able to say anything that hasn't been said.
Right.
Although I think that's kind of reversing. I think there's an opportunity in people saying you can't talk about that because it's like, oh, well, I'm going to talk about that.
Right. Well, a lot of comedians, they say like, as long as you mention the fact like, oh, I'm not supposed to talk about this, it's kind of like cheating in a little bit. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I don't know if I agree with that.
But do you know what I'm getting at? When you just
really.
like, okay, so if you're telling a joke that's like totally taboo and bad and it's fucked up, you shouldn't say it, but you preface it with like, I'm not supposed to be saying this, it gives people an opportunity to be like,
I don't agree with that.
So how do you get around that? How do you like be able to tell a joke that's so fucked up and so unbelievably horrible?
I would answer the question like this. There's a basketball hoop over there and you have a basketball. How do you get the ball in the hoop?
You throw it.
Yeah, but like, how did you do it? How'd you do it?
Picked up the ball.
Yeah, you use your skill, your judgment, your experience. You navigated all the circumstances in no conscious thought. You used instinct to get that ball in the hoop. And that's what getting a joke to work is like.
Right.
Now, if you're way on the other side of the court, getting that ball in the hoop is going to be really hard. And if you're in a room full of women and you're trying to do a rape joke, that punchline, getting that laugh is going to be really hard. But the way that people that are able to do it make it happen is through their experience and their technical ability. There's no trick. There's no like, hey, I don't believe in this, so I can say it.
All right,
Believe me, people are still going to pass their judgment on the content of what you're saying.
Let me rephrase a little bit. So what I've seen recently, like for example, with Aziz Ansari and his set, he took a moment to be serious and not say a joke. And I don't know how I feel about that. Sometimes I think like a comedian when they're doing their set, it's like you should just be doing your comedy show. But taking a moment to be serious is like, how do you feel about breaking character in air quotes, like during a set?
I think that your example is an anomaly because the problem with Aziz is that if he didn't take it seriously, there are a lot of people that would say, so for those people that don't know, Aziz was accused of something related to the Me Too movement that a lot of people think was a non-issue. A lot of people think was a big issue. There's a real divided opinion about whether he had a right to perform stand-up again. So he had to address it somehow. How is that? I don't know what your opinion about what he did is, but I can tell you that there are people that he had to appease that have a different opinion to whatever your opinion is.
Sure.
And the answer as to how you do that, maybe you didn't want to be serious, but maybe people said, if you're not serious with this, then no one's going to take you seriously that you've addressed it.
Do you think you should listen to those people though?
I don't think there's a simple answer. You know, I think that as a professional who's been blacklisted, your path back in isn't something you necessarily have a lot of choice in.
That's true.
You know, and I think at some level you have to eat it and be like, I always want to come back. You know, I have to do certain things. And I don't know what, you know, I've worked with Aziz before. I don't know how he feels about that. I haven't, you know, I don't know. So none of this is based on what he was actually trying to do, what he was doing. But my read on it is that was a necessary thing that he had to do to kind of cleanse the palate of what had happened and be like, all right, let's get back to doing stand-up.
Right. I definitely agree. There's not one simple answer. Hindsight's going to be 2020 when you're dealing with a situation like that.
Yeah, and he might be wrong. You know, let's also just like factor in that. Let's say you're going to get the ball in the hoop over there and you're like, I think it would be easier if I do it around my back, and you miss. And everyone's like, well, that was stupid. We're like, well, but hindsight is 2020. And at that moment, my instinct was telling me that was the right way to deal with that situation.
Then go for it. But I'm going to bring up another example, like in Joe Rogan's like Stranger Times, or this is like whatever the name.
TV show Stranger Times?
No, it's not Stranger Things. Like we're living in strange. I think it's just called Strange Times, or
just one of his specials.
It's special. His most recent special.
I mean, I like Rogan, but I haven't seen his most recent special.
Really? Oh, well, damn. I thought you would have. Okay, so the way he opens, like we're living in strange times. Like we're living in such like what can you say? What can you not? So I think that's one way of starting the premise of the joke. Like he's not apologizing for anything. He's being somewhat serious, but then he's going into a joke.
Yeah, I think the problem with assessing stand-up is you never really know what the stand-up wants to do. And anything they say or do it's like a magician. It's like, you never know, except that a magician in the end, you're like, oh, this was all to get that trick. Why did he have his hand over here? What is the misdirection? You know, you don't, until he tells you what it is, you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know why he set it up. You don't know what he wants his point of view to be. Maybe he's like Hannah Gadsby. Maybe being funny isn't a priority as much as it is for other people. Maybe he has a message he wants to send. I just think that it comes back to that having an opinion about stuff. It's like maybe there's another version to this that I don't know yet. And you're talking about stand-up in some ways is like magic, although stand-ups would hate me for saying that. In that there's a lot of misdirection. There's a lot of trying to position the way an audience is looking at something and sometimes trying to do that is ineffective. So I just try to enjoy it. You know, I listen, there's nothing wrong with a thought experiment being like, well, what was the effect of doing that? You know? But I think that in the end of the day, until this guy sits down and tells you, and even then, like there was an interview that John Mulaney did where they were like, how well do you understand your material? And he's like, you know, I was editing my special and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize I'd made this connection or I was doing this. Because instinct will operate outside of your conscious mind a lot of the time.
Can you talk a little bit about creating a joke? Because like I've never I've gone as far as writing a joke down in like Evernote, and then I even just try and say it out loud. I'm like, this is so terribly horrible. I would never even want to do this with one person in front of me.
Yeah, that's what it's like being a stand-up.
Yeah, but like, how do you flesh it out? How do you make it better?
I don't know. Like I think that creativity is hard to plan, but what you can do is plan and be attentive to things that ignite your own creativity. You know, like a lot of people say everyone's different. Like why, you know, some people say you should write at the same time every day for the same amount of time and you just sort of gear your brain into creating. I'm open to anything. You know, I think listening is a big part. You know, you get an idea, you say something funny, whatever. Just be my school of thought is record everything and edit later, which is, I didn't invent that, you know. And the difference between stand-up and say writing a book or even a podcast is that you have so much like I'll do it once in front of 5 people. I'm like, all right, that was good. Then I'll do it in 10 people. By the time I do a joke in front of 1,000, 2,000 people, I've done it in front of 10 times that many people over hundreds of shows.
Right.
You know?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, as you perform more in front of different groups, like, I'm not a comedian by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh,
but
what? That was why I was here.
But I've listened to other comedians' podcasts, and they talk about their process and how, you know, that Jim Gaffigan episode,
I'm opening for Jim in Moscow in November.
Does that kind of blow your mind that you've reached that level where you open for professionals like that?
It blows my mind that, like, I've worked with some guys who,
and in Moscow, like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I've worked with a few guys, like, I don't know, it sounds wanky to list the people I've worked with, but there are people I've worked with who are at the top of the game, and my interactions with them are what you would expect them to be. You meet them, they're nice, they're never going to remember you, you know, or maybe they do, but they don't care. What blew my mind the most is people like Gaffigan, who I can now, like, just message. You know? Like, that to me is, like, phenomenal. He's so cool and he's so good. You know? Like, that just, like, every day I'm just like, how did I run an open mic? How did I do a show in BDs and end up with Jim Gaffigan?
Well, they talk about how he might be like a comedian's comedian, or he's kind of like, you know, someone that you like.
That's kind of a wanky thing, though. The idea of a comedians, when you talk about comedian, that's when stand-up becomes cliquey. And it's like comics, like most of the jokes of the people they work with in general, I think, if you work as a stand-up and they're your peers, you're going to like their material. But then there's like that guy, but it's more like people lower down the food chain who are like, oh, that's the one the comics love, you know? And
where did you meet Jim?
I booked him. We did a tour together. We did 10 shows in March of this year.
In China?
No, we did 2 shows in China. I did with him shows in Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Bangkok, Singapore, Tokyo, Taipei, and Seoul.
That's cool. So that's something you do professionally, is book art or comedians? Or
yeah.
You did I read Live Nation or Live Comedy or something? Or what do you...
I run Live Nation's comedy business for Asia. That's
pretty cool. So you've worked like with any other like cool stories or people that you've worked with? Interesting. Like, how did you get into something like that? You don't just, did you fall into it? How does something like that even happen?
I mean, I started running really small shows and I wanted to be a comedian. They didn't have a promoter. So I had to be a promoter. It turns out I'm way better at promoting than I am at comedy.
Yeah.
Which I hope is not true. But in a new market, there's when you're creating the paths, there's opportunities to jump up really quickly if you can do an okay job.
That's funny that like your episode and past episode I just did with Archie is like almost the same in terms of the story of creating.
I mean, Archie's done a lot more than I've done.
Maybe on a bigger scale, but it's the same idea. Like comedy didn't exist before you came here. And not to say it didn't exist, but it didn't exist on the level that you brought it to potentially, whether you want to talk yourself up that much. Archie did the same thing with festivals. Festivals weren't around. And then 10 years later after he was there's 80 festivals.
Ironically, the guys I actually, I don't know, I should say this publicly because I don't know, but I think he worked with a lot of the guys that became the Live Nation guys.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to see like how much stuff, how quickly things can change over the course of like your time in Shanghai. Like you start something and it just becomes so much bigger.
Sure. Yeah. Well, what happened for me was I booked Eddie Izzard. And it's kind of a long story that I shouldn't go into too much detail because there is some politics in it, but I managed to get him a permit for performing when no one could get permits. And by luck, I just happened to catch the ear of the right person. And Live Nation, which is the biggest concert producer in the world, I had met them. They'd been at that point, the comedy club had been running for a few years. Anyone that had been in Shanghai had been through the comedy club. Expats for sure. And they were like, how did you do this? Can we do any more? And I just happened to have booked Russell Howard that year, which those 2 acts in the same year, you know, even now it's like difficult to replicate that level. And I said to them, look, do you want to do this show with me? And they said yes. And we collaborated on it. And then the guy that was sort of the head of the office, who I was close with, became quite senior for Asia, and they needed a guy to do comedy, and they didn't know anyone else that could book acts at that level, and so they gave me a shot.
I think what a lot of people don't like to hear is like you might have gotten lucky. And I want to explain my definition of lucky. My definition is when preparation meets opportunity. So a lot of people think luck is like, oh, it just happened, like 1 in a million, it just happened to you. But I think that like you were prepared for the situation. You put in your time, the opportunity came at the right time and you took advantage of it.
I mean, I think that it comes back to how you digest things, and it depends who you are. On the one hand, I appreciate what you're saying. I think the danger with that point of view is that you start to think that you're owed things, you know, that you deserve things. And I am grateful for all of the chances I had that worked out. And I feel like easily those things couldn't have happened. And the position I'd be in would be very different if those things hadn't happened. And so I do feel genuinely very lucky about it. I have friends who are as capable as I am, who work as hard as I am. I'm not saying I'm capable or whatever. I'm just saying that we're quite equal. And by sheer chance, I've managed to do probably more than them. Do I think that I'm better than them? Of course I do. No.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying?
So serious. I was all locked in. Eyes wide open.
You know, I mean, they're just schmucks who don't deserve anything, really.
Right. But in the spirit of giving advice to people, like I go back and forth.
People just need to get over themselves. And if you can't do something when it's hard and not that rewarding, you're not going to be able to do it when it gets big. Because when it gets big, it is still as hard. It's probably harder. It's the problem when you get to a higher level is that when you're at the bottom, the sky is above you, right? And the sky's above you, even if that sky lowers in its perceived height, you're still working, you're still going to get up. But the problem is when you get up a little bit higher, you suddenly have your sky way up there, and then some deal doesn't work out. And suddenly the difference in what you thought you were doing and where you're actually at starts to shift around so wildly that your emotional ability to depend on your perceived trajectory is really unstable. You know, and so what I think then it comes down to is like, are you able to derive enjoyment and a sense of satisfaction out of this when it's really difficult and you don't have these bright blue skies that you're shooting into? And if you can't do that at the bottom, you're not going to be able to do it at the top or the middle or whatever.
Do you ever feel
you know what I'm saying when I say that?
I do. I'm going in a little bit of a somewhat different direction with the next question, but it relates to like, as you get like you rise in your career, do you feel more pressure to do the material that got you to, I don't know if comedy relates to this, but for maybe making videos or, you know, online creation, like you fall into a certain lane of what you became famous for. And then does it become scary to like branch out from that genre, maybe you could say? Or
I am not famous enough. I'm not famous, right? So I'm not pigeonholed. No one thinks of me as being a thing.
That might be true, yeah.
So I don't have that restriction.
Right.
That is a real restriction that people face. I'm not. It is not a restriction that I face or may ever face.
For me, like I do the Instagram and it's not even such a big deal or like, but like I can't post content that doesn't fall in line with what I've been previously posting.
Okay, that's a different question. And I would say you made it, you choose.
But like, I guess the question doesn't apply to you because you're not dealing with feeling caged in. Do you ever like feel caged in?
Yeah, I do all the time. Yeah.
So does that frustrate you or do you just kind of accept it?
I just think that frustration is just a passing emotion that won't provide you any useful, decision-making addition. So get rid of that. I mean, you can't just get rid of frustration, but don't let your decision be driven by that and ask yourself. I think instinct is your most powerful tool. And your instinct will tell you what direction to take it in. If you feel like it's the right move, you should do it. Yeah, I make a podcast. It's supposed to be a certain thing. Sometimes I'm like, wow, this doesn't really fit into that. And, I changed something recently and a lot of people complained about it. And they will, and I was like, I thought about what they said and I was like, they're right. I agree with what they're saying. And
Can you share the example or?
Yeah, it was so people, I did a whole thing where I said I have a more committed listeners, and I said, look, can you just give me some feedback about what you think this is going? And a really consistent thing was I used to do a podcast where I interviewed people, and it was quite popular. And I stopped it because it was too much work. And a lot of people stopped listening because of that. Right. And so when I did this review, they were like, it'd be nice if you had another person on there every now and then. Because I do a podcast that's just me. You know, if you don't like listening to me, boy, you're not going to like my podcast. Right. So I thought, you know what? I like the freedom of being able to have someone on when I feel like having someone on. Like that. I'm cool with that. You know, but what I did was I went back to the old mode of interviewing them. But at that point, I developed a whole program of what the podcast was.
So
and people like, it was really off-putting that you had this other person, you just threw out of the window what you were doing. They're like, we want that other person there to do what you normally do. And I did that a bunch more times and it went really well. And I was like, yeah, that was great feedback.
It's an interesting story about how like you changed as a person and then you kind of have to go back and reevaluate how to do the show again.
Yeah, well, you just got to ask yourself, like, what is it? What do I want to do? You know, and going back to my earlier statement about doing it, being able to do it with satisfaction when it's difficult, that can be a driving decision maker. Because if you're just doing things to keep other people happy and you're not making money, then you're going to hate it. So a lot of the things I do, especially when I'm not making money, are to keep me happy. Because if I keep myself happy, I'll keep doing it. And if I try to keep other people happy, no one is ever going to hear about this thing and it's not going to go anywhere.
Definitely. I was just listening to this, like it's a podcast, Daily TED Talk, and Joseph Levitt or something. He's an actor. I don't know if I said his name right. Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Not sure.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Yeah, he's a very famous actor.
Okay, I got the name right. So
you're like, oh, you never heard about this guy, but it's Brad Pitt.
No. I just couldn't picture whether it was Joe, like whatever. So he does the podcast in his
Third Rock from the Sun.
Third what?
He was on Third Rock from the Sun.
Third Rock from the Sun.
He was like the
movie, TV show, or
good Lord, have you been living under a rock for the last?
Maybe so. What era?
You're 27. You really
27.
Haven't heard of Third Rock from the Sun?
No. What, like,
have you heard
TV
of
show?
Have you heard of The Simpsons?
Yes. Simpsons.
Okay.
We can narrow it down from there.
Yeah. It's the one after that.
Okay. No, he was Family Ties is like what he said. He was his first thing that he was on.
Oh, yeah. He must have been young.
Yeah.
I mean, he must be your age. No, I mean, he might be closer to me. I think he's between us.
Is he the dude from 500 Days of Summer?
I haven't seen that.
Dude, that's a good fucking movie. It's a chick flick, but I
know the guy that wrote that.
Really?
Yeah. So Turner, my business partner, his friend, his name is Michael Weber.
Yeah.
He's this just crazy. So Turner has a podcast. His co-host is Robert De Niro's PA.
Okay.
And that there was a whole bunch of friends. They were like friends with Turner's brother in college, and they're all super tight now. So Robert De Niro's old PA turns out to be an amazing screenwriter. He wrote 500 Days of Summer. He wrote The Disaster Artist, you know, the movie about.
Oh my God. with
James Franco
plays
Seth
the dude.
Rogen.
Yeah.
The guy from The Room, the movie The Room.
Yeah.
And he did another one. It was The Fault in Our Stars.
Not familiar.
Yeah. Anyway, he's written like a bunch of really
those
really
two though. Those are like art pieces to me. Like the 500 Days of Summer. When I first saw that,
you should go check out Fault in Our Stars. Same guy.
I'll check it out because like I guess you haven't seen it, so I can explain a little bit. Just the way it's shot it was the first movie that wasn't like in chronological order for me. Like it jumps back and forth between 500 Days, like the story. So for me, that was my first experience into seeing like the way something can be done, something different. It was very inspiring to me. And like,
dude, that goes back to my point of Richard Pryor. That when you create something that hasn't been done before and you change people's mindset about what is possible.
Right. That's huge. And
that is a big thing. It's not limited to stand-up. You know?
For sure. What I think is so amazing about stand-up though, is you're doing that with just your mouth.
It is a very limiting. Now you got your face, your hands.
Yeah, for sure. But like you don't have like props, or you don't have a jump, like you don't have a ring of fire to
some
like
people do.
Yeah, but let's narrow it down to just like traditional comedians.
I don't know if you've ever seen a stand-up show, Third Rock from the Sun. I always get that confused with 30 Rock.
Oh man.
Anyway, yeah, I do think that whatever you do, You don't even have to be talking about entertainment. If you do something that people haven't seen before, you change the way they think.
Right. I think that's a great way to wrap it up. Super inspiring. Let's do a little plug time. Can you tell people where they can find you? What they can do?
Yeah, I'll be living out of a Singaporean Shanghainese prison after this podcast.
Probably. I might have to.
I have a podcast called Stuck in the Middle. You can find it anywhere. I'm Andy Curtin. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all Andy Curtin. And we're opening up a comedy club in Hong Kong called The Riff. It'll be open in late October. Come check out a show.
Awesome. Thanks a bunch for coming on, Andy.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right. Later, guys. Boom. That's it. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this podcast valuable, there are many ways you can support it. You can rate and review it on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. You can share it with your friends, you can blog about it, or discuss it on your own podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe to this channel and like the video. Or you can support it directly. You can do this by going to my website. I'll leave a link in the description. Thank you for supporting the show. Listeners like you make it possible. Also, if you enjoyed the intro and outro music, it was made by my brother, Danny Greenberg. You can go and check out his beats at soundcloud.com/estoric. ESTORIC. Okay, that's it for now. Peace.